times I've been getting ready to vote that it felt like a win-win. So whoever we get is good. I made sure I got somebody who was young and cute to come up and do the moderating so you would like looking at her. So Trish Tillman.
Good evening, Portland. Wow, you all look amazing, beautiful. It's wonderful to see you all here tonight. How many of you are hot? Okay. How many of you came to hear from two amazing, dynamic candidates? Okay. Here's the thing. The less you talk, the more you listen, the faster we're out of here, getting a lot of information in the meantime, okay? So I just want to underscore what Donna said about holding the applause. There will be 2 exceptions for that, and keeping your conversations for after we're done here tonight, okay? So thank you, Donna. Thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to serve as the moderator for you all for this forum in this historic race. Not since the 2010 race for County Commissioner, District 2, between Loretta Smith and Carol Collymore, has there been a race where it was guaranteed that a Black woman would be elected to a local office in Oregon. Okay, got it. The City of Portland Commissioner election will be historic regardless of the outcome. In these next 2 hours, minus a few minutes, as with all race talk events, we have the opportunity to move beyond minimizing or overlooking race, and instead we'll delve into the substance, nuance, and beauty of race and the burdens and threats of racism in our community. So I'm going to start by introducing the 2 candidates, and then when they're seated up here, I'll go over the rules for them, and then we'll get started. And I'm reading verbatim the statements that they submitted. So the words I'm saying do not express the opinions of the speaker. JoAnn Hardesty, most known for her 1995 to 2001 term as Oregon State Representative, we knew her then as JoAnn Bowman, her weekly Thursday morning radio segment on KBOO, and her former role as NAACP Portland President. JoAnn is a community leader and activist with a long history of standing for the city's most disadvantaged communities for nearly 30 years. As the only candidate who proactively challenged incumbent Dan Saltzman for his city council seat, JoAnn firmly believes that opportunities to thrive in Portland should not depend on someone's zip code or their background. Her campaign platform focuses on access to government, green and living wage jobs, affordable housing, and police reform. So here's your one opportunity. Let's welcome JoAnn Bowman. All right, thank you. It's still hot in here. It's like church. All right, now Commissioner Loretta Smith. For nearly 3 decades, Loretta Smith has made working on behalf of our most vulnerable her priority. She was born to a union family in Michigan, her dad a boxer, and mom a United Auto Workers member. She was the first in her family to graduate from college. Straight out of Oregon State, she began working for Senator Ron Wyden. Over 20 years with Senator Wyden, she rose from receptionist to become his field representative. For nearly 8 years, she has served on the Multnomah County Commission with a passion and commitment rarely seen in public office. She's known as someone who will not back down from a tough fight. She'll always put first those who need it most, regardless of what powerful interests are on the other side. She created the Summer Works program to help at-risk youth learn valuable life skills and place them in permanent employment. When racism reared its ugly head at the county, Loretta led the charge to ensure all employees could feel safe in their workplace. With her collaborative approach and solid track record, Loretta is just what Portland needs on City Council. Now let's welcome Commissioner Loretta Smith. Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank both of you, wonderful women, for your years of leadership and community and public service. It's hard work, folks. I have immense respect for your commitment to our democratic process and to advancing well-being, because you could have just focused on yourself and your family, but you include all of us, and for your ability to navigate through complex, long-standing issues and entrenched bureaucracies. So at this moment, I'm going to just review quickly the rules which both candidates have received in advance. I have 11 questions, which I will restate for each candidate. I will interrupt you if you are not answering the question and restate the question, so please stay on point. You will each have 2 minutes to answer each question. This is not a debate. There will be no opportunity for rebuttals. Please keep an eye on Donna Maxey. She will hold up cards that will tell you how much time you have left. 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop. I will interrupt you if you go beyond the red card. Okay. I love these women. I just need to know that they need to know. All right. Okay. No personal attacks. And I've spoken with each of the candidates individually. This is essential. If you do stray into the area of personal attack, you will forfeit your time to answer the question. We want this to be a productive, enlightening conversation that lifts up all of our understanding. Since this is a discussion that is rooted in a dialogue about race, the focus of these questions will be on your experience as Black leaders, Black elected officials, and Black candidates, and how you've navigated racism in this community and state. We will also have time for you to talk a little about your policy priorities, again, specifically within the context of how race and racial justice are undeniable elements of your values, lived experience in this contest. And this is being live streamed on Facebook with Sam Sachs.
Thank you. I want to thank Donna Maxey, Race Talks, and Tricia Tillman for helping to host and moderate this evening's forum. And I do have to say this in the spirit of Stuart Emmons. He would always say, when it's hotter than fish grease in here. And had I known this, they didn't have any air conditioner. This is particularly for the older folks. I would have not agreed to it. So I just want y'all to know, full disclosure. So, good evening. My name's Loretta Smith, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself. When I think about the city of Portland, I look at it through a lens of 5 generations of family. I think about my grandparents who came here from Brooklyn, New York in 1944 so that my grandfather could work in the Kaiser shipyards. After the war was over, they stayed in Portland. They made a family. They had 8 kids. My dad was one of 8. Housing was affordable. Jobs were plentiful. But I'm going to tell y'all, Portland has changed. Housing is not affordable anymore. Homelessness is at an all-time high. Camping associated with homelessness It's out of control. And can you believe we have unprecedented prosperity here in Portland? But what I want to do as your Portland City Councilwoman, I want to make sure we all have an opportunity to succeed.
JoAnn.
All right. Good evening. I want to thank each and every one of you for being in this space tonight. My name is JoAnn Hardesty, and I want to be your next Portland City Council member. Why I want to be your City Council member, I want to be very clear. I am not running to be the first of anything. I am running because I have the experience, the background, the credibility, and I've done the work over the last 30 years that proves that I will speak truth wherever I need to, that I am unafraid and unapologetically black, and I've been black since I was born and will die black. I want you to know, as your City Council member, people rarely ask white men if they can represent people of color. So I find it kind of ironic that when two African American women run, people want to know, but can you represent all the people? I have built my campaign around creating one Portland, a Portland that thrives for everyone. I hope you will take the time to listen carefully and listen to be sure that I am running as a people candidate. I had over 1,200 individual donors in the primary, more than all my competitors combined, because I am a grassroots leader, and I have proven that the people want a voice in their city council. They do not want the status quo, the same old, same old. They want visionary, bold leadership that will be unafraid to tell my colleagues when they get it wrong. Thank you.
Okay. I apologize for not giving you that first 1 minute opening. So now we're going to get into the questions. So Commissioner Smith, is there a heightened standard for you as a black candidate in this election season, or a lowered standard? An expectation that you will go dirty, or that you will fight less hard so that this campaign lifts up the black community regardless of what doesn't get said?
Thank you, Tricia, for that question. I think that this campaign is going to be about the issues. This campaign is about someone who has experience, education, a track record, somebody who does their homework. And I know that this campaign has to be about jobs, housing affordability, homelessness, public safety, transportation. We all have an opportunity to have an opportunity. That's what I'm looking for. And I'll be looking to put in policies that have an equity lens on everything that we do. But you know, this is not reality TV. This is personal for me, Tricia. I have a track record. I have a track record of success. I know how to move the ball down the field. We have more money in housing and homelessness since I've been on the county commission than ever before. We've increased the high school graduation rates through a Promised Neighborhood grant that we did. And we have a budget that reflects our values. And I know that I have 78 budget amendments and resolutions, more than anyone else that I've ever served with, to help this community. And I do think, yes ma'am.
Please hold your applause.
I do think that it is very odd that when two black women run, no one says anything about when two white men run. What they say is, let's find out about their experience. Let's find out about their education. Let's find out about their track record, and let's find out about their effectiveness, not affectiveness, but effectiveness. And that's what we do, and that's what you all need to do when you're judging us two. I just find it just so unconscionable that we would even say in this day and age about the color of two people. But what it says to me is that me and JoAnn have the values of the majority of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hardesty, is there a heightened standard for you as a Black candidate in this election season, or a lowered standard? An expectation that you will go dirty, or that you will fight less hard so that this campaign lifts up the Black community regardless of what doesn't get said?
I have a history of fighting for what is right. It started as a legislator in Oregon. When ballot measure 11 passed, I was the only elected leader willing to put my name on a ballot measure to repeal ballot measure 11, the mandatory minimum sentencing law that sends 15-year-olds to jail. Today in Salem, I look like a visionary because they understand that the money we're spending on prisons is at the expense of our education system. I have a record of bringing people together. So when you vote for me in November, you also will have the opportunity to vote on the Portland Clean Energy Fund Initiative, which is an innovative fund that will bring money into communities of color. I have been around long enough to know that government comes up with all kind of buzzwords about how they're going to help women and people of color. It used to be affirmative action, then it was diversity, then it was inclusion. The new buzzword is equity. I look at outcomes. I am someone that is driven by data. And when I look at the data and realize that African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans, the needle has not moved in 30 years, I am the one that asks the question, why is that? Why is it in a city of 6% African Americans, 59% of Portland Police gang enforcement stops are of African Americans? You need someone who's willing to ask the hard questions.
Thank you. The next question is for you. As a Black woman in leadership, undoubtedly you've experienced personal and professional attacks. Some of those have been fairly recent and very public. How do you demonstrate support for each other and other Black elected officials? How have you demonstrated support for Black leaders, particularly Black women in times of crisis or attack? And is there a calculus you use to determine whether that support is active publicly or behind the scenes?
I believe that question alludes to whether or not I stood up when somebody was called a nasty word. And as president of the NAACP, my role was not to make a decision for the NAACP Portland branch membership. I invited the person who had been called a bad name to actually come to the executive committee of the NAACP and make the case for why the NAACP Portland branch should support them. I told them that that would be step one. Step two would be going to the general membership and making the case. There are people that think the NAACP president is the decision maker. They are not. The members are the decision makers. I am the one that cries with mothers who have lost their children at the hands of the police. I'm the one that shows up at those protests demanding accountability. I am the one that helps those mothers find legal advice and legal support. I would challenge anyone to suggest that I haven't stood firmly and boldly in places where most elected leaders fear to go.
Thank you. I would like to remind the audience, please do not clap or shout, or you will be asked to leave. Thank you. Commissioner Smith, as a Black woman in leadership, undoubtedly you have experienced personal and professional attacks. Some of those have been fairly recent and very public. How do you demonstrate support for each other and other Black elected officials? How have you demonstrated support for Black leaders, particularly Black women, in times of crisis or attack? Is there a calculus you use to determine whether that support is active publicly or behind the scenes?
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you for that question. There's only a handful of African American Black elected women, and I am the only Black person, period, who's a county commissioner in the state of Oregon. I know that it is very easy to say what you will and won't do, but until you actually get into this public seat, it's difficult. So you need someone that you can talk to. And that handful of folks, we're pretty tight. We talk to one another, we go out, we eat, we talk about, why did you go into this kind of work? We remind each other that it's important to have a voice and to be able to use a voice from Black women and from our perspective and from our lived experience. And so oftentimes it's not behind any kind of negative interaction. We get together just because we like each other. We get together and we laugh and we talk about our families. We talk about what's going on in the community, what we want to do for our futures. It's fun because we don't really have a place that we can just be us. And so when we get together, it is always a good thing because we're very busy and we rarely have time to get with each other. But for me, I'm always trying to inspire and to support Black women and women of color. That's why I started this luncheon, this Dr. Martin Luther King luncheon 6 years ago. It's a Dr. Martin Luther King lunch for women to inspire them to go into public service. That's why I do that. I bring Black elected officials who are women into this city that are nationally known so that they can inspire our women of color and give them an opportunity to be an opportunity one day. And so for me, I think that's my responsibility. No one has ever done that before, and I think that's important going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, the next question is for you. How do you navigate as a Black woman in a white-dominant culture city, particularly during election season? And when I ask that question, I'm thinking about what happened recently to Representative Janelle Bynum when she was canvassing. I think about your personal safety, and I think about the pressures to stay inside a presentable box that's acceptable to dominant culture.
I think I do that very carefully and very professionally, because I was raised Black, I was socialized Black, and I lived in a community that's 5.8% white. And so it's always a balancing act when you're in leadership, and it's a tightrope that we have to walk. And so I always have to rise above the things that happen to me personally or professionally. And I think that one of the things as Black women, we're always under attack. We're always having to be measured. And given the state of my position, when I was called the B word in December, I was exhausted by it. I was hurt by it. But what I knew was that I could elevate this and go nuclear, or I could go forward and say, we're gonna go and we're gonna do this and we're gonna settle it. And we did. And so I know that back in the day, when I was growing up in my family and friends, being called the B word, those is fighting words. But as an elected official and a leader in this community where people are looking at me, young girls are trying to figure out how do they respond in those kinds of situations, I always go back to what Michelle Obama said. When they go low, you go high. I have a track record, I have experience, I have education. I know how to work in this environment, even when there's workplace harassment. I know that it's very important not to be mistaken for being passionate and calling that intimidating or making people feel uncomfortable. But as an African American woman, I have to be in a space that is always on that straight line. I want to continue to do this and continue to be the leader that we have had and that you've seen when I've been on the county commission. I want to make sure that I'm not the last Multnomah County Commissioner who's African American. Thank you.
Ms. Hardesty, how do you navigate as a Black woman in a white dominant culture city, particularly during election season?
In order to answer that question, I want to remind folks that I stand on the shoulders of Gladys McCoy. The year I moved here, Gladys McCoy was chairing the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners, and her husband, Bill McCoy, was a state senator. I stand on their shoulders, and I proudly stand on their shoulders, and I am unapologetically an African American woman. You look at me, you're not trying to figure out, I wonder what you're not trying to figure that out. Now, I come with a powerful voice, but I come not just with a powerful voice, I come with data. I come because I have read the audits that came out of the auditor's office. I have read the stop data for who is stopped by Portland Police and why. I have read the data on time and time again why we've been unsuccessful at contracting with women and people of color. So I know the data. And so sometimes people like to dismiss me as the angry Black woman. And in fact, I love the cover of Willamette Week when they did that. I don't run away from that. I think in the Pacific Northwest, we have a disease called let's not make any white people uncomfortable. And I don't feel like I actually have to live in that parameter. I am okay if white people are uncomfortable, especially if I get the answers about the outcomes we all say we want. If we are setting policy, we should be holding people accountable for whether or not the outcomes are there. And we have done a poor job of that thus far.
Thank you. All right, I want to go ahead and just follow up on that question because the next question really focuses in on how you deal with stereotypes of Black females in leadership. So both of you have sort of touched on this. When we don't smile, it's called resting bee face. Owning your experience or authority, correcting people or disagreeing is like not knowing your place or being arrogant or narcissistic. Managing detail or going deep on an issue or requiring accountability is called micromanaging. Passionate discourse or debate, raising your voice, as you alluded to, is considered the angry Black woman. So how do you deal with those stereotypes in leadership?
When I went back and became president of the NAACP Portland branch, it was on life support. And I did not have money or power to offer people to volunteer to work with me to rebuild that organization. I am happy to say today it is a financially sound organization that is doing incredible work to address racial inequality in our community. Now, when you can't pay people money, you have to be able to make people feel good about volunteering their time, about putting their money on the table, and I have been able to do that. When you are running a all-volunteer organization, you have to be able to inspire people. And I'm happy to say that I built a very multiracial, multicultural, multi-generational organization that is sound, and I was comfortable being able to walk away from it knowing it had strong leadership that had been put in place. Now, I have always been a very opinionated woman. That is not because I'm Black, that's just because I have strong opinions. And I have used that, quite frankly, to educate myself and other people along the way. And so being Black, being strong, being opinionated, and being knowledgeable is not a detriment when people of goodwill come together to solve community problems. And so I have relationships with the entire city council and the entire Multnomah County Commission and with Metro and with TriMed, and I will work those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, how have you dealt with stereotypes of black females in leadership?
There's so many stereotypes, but I'm going to follow back up on something. When the Willamette Week put my opponent on the front page of the Willamette Week, I thought that was unacceptable. Because black women have been working so hard for so long to not have that stereotype. We've been prevented opportunities for education, jobs, career advancement because we've been called angry, we've been called divisive, we've been called loud, passionate. And so for me, I thought that that was a ploy. That didn't help black women. In fact, it kind of pushed us back. I won't allow it. I won't allow anyone to call me an angry black woman, okay? I want to make sure that who I am can be representative of the state, can be representative of our young people, can be representative of our race. So that wasn't cool for me, especially if I can take you back for just a second. Remember when the young lady who was in Head Start preschool, she got kicked out because she said she was too angry? Y'all remember that? But do you remember when people would tell you, you know, you have to work really hard and you have to be nice and you have to smile like Tricia was talking about, and so that people can accept you. This is not a new rule. I don't want y'all to think that y'all can be angry in advance, because you can't. Because when I walk into a department store, when I walk into a grocery store, somebody follows me because they think I'm gonna steal something, okay? So that doesn't come out of a vacuum. That stuff is manufactured, and to lean into that stereotype is unacceptable, and I won't allow it.
Thank you. And I do want to just note, I am paying very close attention to whether or not comments get to the place of a personal attack. What I heard was a comment about the Willamette Week, not about the person on the cover of the Willamette Week. I'm not asking for a response. I'm going to move into the next. I just want you to know I am very attentive. I'm very attentive. Excuse me. So the next question, you got to hold your tongue. I'm sorry, it's not allowed for people to yell out here. Commissioner Smith, the next question is for you. How do you bring black issues, how do you elevate black issues, and more broadly, people of color issues into a dominant white discourse? How does dominant culture encourage or discourage you for not compromising on uniquely black issues? And what general City of Portland priorities should the black community specifically, and communities of color more broadly, not be sleeping on?
Thank you, Tricia. I think if you're going to talk about black issues, you need to talk to black people, right? You need to talk to organizations who work with black people. And so that's the first thing that you need to do as a leader, not just me as a black elected official, because I can't carry all the water alone for black issues. I know what they are. No one has to tell me that there are disparities in education, that there are disparities in healthcare, there's disparities in our housing system. I know that, but I need allies who don't look like me to be able to carry some of this water too. So when I went to Multnomah County, the first meeting that I had, I organized a roundtable of youth programs that served black kids and kids of color, because I wanted to know what I could do to be helpful and useful to make that infrastructure work a little bit better. Then the second meeting that I had was, I had a town hall meeting to discuss black issues around black men and boys. It was 300 people. It was just like tonight. The line was around the corner. We only accepted, 197 people in the boardroom? And they lined up. And these were black men from the ages of 12 to 74. And I'll tell you how I know that, because I gave them a survey. I didn't ask for their names. I asked how old they were. And I wanted to figure out, what could I do for you to be helpful in this position? Since I am the second African American in the history of Multnomah County to sit on this county commission, I wanted to make sure I got it right. Out of that meeting, that's how my summer jobs came to light. I gave it the basis because I talked to folks. They told me they wanted jobs for the kids. The kids said they wanted jobs, and so that's when I went to work. And I put 25 jobs into play. We've grown that program to 650 jobs that we have for our kids. I've leveraged over 7,000 jobs over 7 years. I don't think anyone has ever done that before.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Ms. Hardesty, how do you elevate Black issues and more broadly people of color issues into a dominant white discourse? How does dominant culture encourage or discourage you for not compromising on uniquely Black issues? And what general City of Portland priorities should the Black community specifically and communities of color more broadly not be sleeping on?
I am never discouraged of speaking truth to power. And when I read the data and I read the reports and I find out that African Americans and Latinos and Native American and Asian Pacific Islanders are not getting their fair share, I don't wait until I get a position to try to figure out how I can help them. I spent the last 2.5 years working with Apano, NAYA, Verde, NAACP, 350 PDX, to put in Sierra Club, to put the Portland Clean Energy Fund initiative on the ballot. I have even stood up against Mayor Wheeler, who hates it and doesn't support it, because it is important for communities of color to control their own outcomes. When you have been in a city that over and over again fails to meet the promises that they've made, that elected officials continue to vote on this strategy and that tactic and that thing, and at the end of the day, nothing has changed in 30 years, you must change the leadership. I never back away from talking about African American issues, but I am not monolithic. I don't just talk about African American issues, because what's good for African Americans are good for Native Americans and are good for white people and good for the entire community. And that is why my theme is One Portland. I have no plan to divide and conquer. My plan is to build a coalition that gets done what we need to get done. We must house all the people in Portland and every zip code. And your zip code your income should not determine your zip code. Today, that is where we are. With my leadership, working in partnership with the other city council members, we will address the very unique issues that are in the African American community, but we will address them all together.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to pause for a moment because we did have a shout out for folks listening or watching online and folks who want to participate in the Q&A process by technology. So we do have a question and answer link. I'm going to read it to you. You can put it in your phone. It's https://pigeonhole @race talks, all caps. We should have it. We should have it in writing.
Just pigeonhole.
Pigeonhole.at/race talks. If you want to put your question in that way. Otherwise, we do have volunteers who are collecting questions. If you have questions, please raise them. The volunteers will come and get them. The other thing I do want to just remind folks is that we are at a Race Talks event, which is where we focus our conversation on race and the substance, nuance, and beauty of race and the burdens and threats of racism. Other forums will very likely be more race neutral or race invisible. Next question, Ms. Hardesty. What fundamentally Black and people of color priorities in the city of Portland are you looking to elevate through this campaign?
Thank you. One of the things I'm most proud of is the campaign finance reform measure that you will also get to vote on when you vote for me in November. And this measure is a game changer because it will allow regular people in our community to get $50 donations from community members and have that matched 6 times by the city of Portland, which means your $50 donation now turns into a $300 donation. That will be a game changer. The biggest drawback for people of color running and serving in public office is money. And my campaign, when I first decided to run, people said, you need $250,000 to unseat Dan Salzman, the current sitting city commissioner. I was not, because I was angry and knew we needed change on the city council, I was not deterred by that. Other people in this race raised more money, but I was much more strategic with my money. Because what I had was people who were willing to go door to door and talk to people and have those conversations. And surprise, surprise, whether you live in Southwest or East Portland, you want roads, you want the potholes filled, you want affordable housing. And so because I had people power, we were able to get 46.3% of the vote in the primary. And that is the strategy and tactic. I am a community organizer by heart, and that is what I will bring to the city council. I brought it to Salem when I was a state representative, and I will bring that same community focus to the city council. The experts are you out there, and you are the people that will be telling us what we need to do to support your work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Please hold your applause. Commissioner Smith, what fundamentally Black and people of color priorities in the city of Portland are you looking to elevate through this campaign?
Thank you for that question, Tricia. I think one of the first things we should do, and what we talked about in the beginning, is voter registration. One of the things that my opponent did say was that there were 29% voter turnout. That's unacceptable. We need at least 70–80% turnout for the general election. And we need to make sure that we educate folks and that we make sure we talk to people down on the ground. Black people care about anything that everybody else cares about. We care about job opportunities. We care about minority contracting. We care about public safety, affordable housing. We want pay equity for women. We want a fair shake when we're in the workplace. We want to make sure that minorities and women-owned businesses have opportunities. The bottom line is Black people care about everything. We care about your issues, our issues. So let me tell you about why I want to make sure that this house has some information. Black people and white people need to learn how to live on the same block. We need to figure out our commonality and work together. That's what I have done in Multnomah County. I have tried to level the playing field for everybody. I do ask the hard question. I do want to hold people accountable and make sure I hold myself accountable and others' feet to the fire. That's what I'm known for. I am known for making sure that we have equity and diversity. And equity and diversity is just not the color of the skin. Equity and diversity is about experiences, education level. It's about doing your homework. It's not about, burning folks and blowing things up. It's about building bridges. That's what being an elected leader is. Sometimes we can get caught up in rhetoric, and that's what it is, rhetoric.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, it's been said that if government addresses the concerns of those with the most needs, then the needs of all will be met. Do you concur with this, and why?
I think that's true because as a woman of faith, I know that when we help the least of us, that's what it says in the Bible, we're going to help a community. Because the people who are the most privileged, they will always be able to take care of themselves. And I've always tried to be a champion for those vulnerable populations, whether it be young people, seniors, communities of color, single parents, small business people who want to get loans. I think those are the folks who make up the city of Portland. The city of Portland doesn't run if you don't have the small businesses working. And you all are doing the work. You all pay a BITI so that we can pay for those programs like mental health and homelessness. Those are the things that people need to know and understand. It's just not a black issue, Tricia. I think it is a community issue. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Hardesty, it's been said that if government addresses the concerns of those with the most needs, then the needs of all will be met. Do you concur with this, and why?
I do concur with that statement, and let me give you a great example. As we push people of color out to the edges of the city of Portland, we are now contemplating charging those same people for the privilege of coming back into the city to work, a city they can't afford to rent in. I also remember that between 2000 and 2010, when 10,000 African American families were displaced from inner Northeast, we didn't say we had a housing crisis. That was urban development. I have been around long enough to know when I'm being just sold a bill of goods and when the data is real. And because I do my homework, I am thorough, I know what's being presented and I know what's behind it. I love the idea of if we deal with the least, but we haven't done that. And a great way to do that would be if we are going to implement congestion pricing, that we absolutely must make sure that low-income people are not unduly burdened by that new initiative. And I have proposed the simple solution is to make public transit free during rush hour. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. Because as the question said, if you make it work for the least of us, it'll work for people with many more options. We don't normally start developing public policy looking at how it impacts low-income people, and I'm the person that will make sure that's what we do.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Hardesty, the next question is yours. While you are both female and African American, you both have alluded to other issues that you feel strongly about. What are some of your key priorities? How do you propose to not be pigeonholed into being authorities on issues that primarily affect African Americans or people of color, or is that a concern of yours?
Well, I am fortunate because I've actually done the work over the last 30 years. So whether it's environmental justice, nobody was paying me to develop the Portland Clean Energy Fund. It was because I did the research and found out no matter what the city of Portland said, people of color were not benefiting. So for the first time in the history of Portland, people of color-led ballot measure is on your November ballot. And people of color collected 66,000 signatures to put it on the ballot. But guess what? It was the white environmental groups that joined hands with us and said, yes, we got your back and we will help you. There were faith organizations that said, this makes sense, we will help you. But we led. We didn't shy away from the fact that we were people of color and that people of color would benefit from this initiative. But in fact, we also are not greedy. We didn't say just people of color would benefit from this initiative. We said those left out of the economic engine, who just happen to be a supermajority of people of color and low-income people. That is the way I have worked my entire history in Oregon. And I don't care who gets credit if it's a good idea. When I was a legislator, you never saw my name on good legislation in a Republican-controlled legislative body. If you don't care who gets credit and you just do the work, then good things come out of it. And that is how I have lived my life, and regardless of what the issue is, whether it's environmental justice, whether it's housing justice, I mean, it's not rocket science. Why don't we send firefighters to be first responders for people with mental health issues? They don't kill people who are ill. Right? Not rocket science. That is the kind of innovative thinking that happens when you have someone who represents the grassroots.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
same question. Do you want to jump in? You want me to repeat it?
Read the question again.
Okay. While you're both female and African American, I'm sure, and you've alluded to other issues that you feel strongly about. What are those issues? How do you propose to not be pigeonholed into being the authority on issues that primarily affect African Americans or people of color, or is that a concern of yours?
That is a bit of a concern, but as a single mom who raised a son in this community, I know how tough it is for women to raise a family, put food on the table, and make sure you get affordable housing to be able to make your family have a good quality of life. But there are a couple of issues that I don't think that we've touched upon that are really key for women in that demographic. And I would have to say, when you talk about affordable housing, women are also talking about affordable daycare. Daycare is outrageous. I don't know how any woman can actually, go to work, pay for daycare, pay for housing in this community. Those are the issues that I'm going to try to work on. And it's more than just, housing and having jobs. It's about being engaging and bringing those folks into the process to help you develop policies. I care about Head Start. I care about good paying jobs. I also care about seniors, trying to keep them in their homes and making sure they're a part of the community. Other issues that I care about, they're issues that people of color care about. We have to be concerned about education. We have to be concerned how our children are being educated in the schoolhouse. Because if we don't, that is the ball game, folks. That is where we can make the most gains for a community, is nailing down on our education and what our kids are doing. It's not necessarily a people of color or a black issue. We have to have the community have that entire conversation about children of color and what they're doing and the disparities, because we can't do it alone. We only have 6% of the population here, but yet we make up 24% of the jails, and that's unconscionable. So I can't carry the water for every issue in every community, but with your support and with your help, we can get some things done.
Thank you. Don't put your microphone down too far, because the next question is for you. What are the advantages to the electorate in having a female and an African American on the Portland City Council?
I think having a woman who's already has a track record and a background in education, that I can ring the alarm bell and say, we're in crisis, folks. We're in a crisis, and the whole country is watching right now. We understand about Oregon and Oregon's racist past and what the racial present looks like. But Washington is broken for sure. Washington is actually developing and taking away policies that impact our lives as people of color. I was the one who authored the sanctuary county legislation in the county right after Donald Trump got elected. Because you know what? I got a lot of calls from people in the immigrant and refugee community. They said they were scared. They wanted to know if they could still come into the health clinics, if they could go to the homeless shelters, if they could participate in Sun schools. So I talked to the chair and I said, we need to do something about this to make the community safe. We passed that in December 2016 to give the community comfort, to let them know we're not turning your name into ICE if you come into the libraries. We're not turning your name into ICE if you come into our health departments. We're not turning your name into ICE if you come in just to do your civic due diligence and coming to a board meeting. We wanted the community to know that we had their back, that we were not going to walk away from them. So for me, I think I am best when I'm speaking truth to power and making sure people understand. We're not afraid, but Washington is broken and we need to fix it.
Thank you. Ms. Hardesty, what are the advantages to the electorate in having a female and person of color on the Portland City Council?
I think the advantage for the city of Portland is that white men have been running Portland City Council for 148 years. And I think having a majority female city council will radically change the dynamic. Adding a woman of color, specifically an African American woman, means I bring all of me to that seat. I cannot separate my blackness from my role as a city council member. And because of my deep relationships in community here, I know many, many, many people who have experiences that are different than me. So just because I'm black doesn't mean I will represent all black people, present, current, and in the future, right? I am only one black voice. African Americans are not monolithic people. There are no monolithic people. I have been living in Oregon long enough to know that I have served on boards that thought that I was the representative for the race, and I had to dispel that myth. My job as a city council member, yes, will be to highlight my lived experience, but my lived experience is my lived experience. My job is to represent the people of the city of Portland. So after 106 house parties in every single corner of the city of Portland, I can tell you that Portlanders have much more in common than we have differences. I can't leave my womanness at home, right? I remember when I first ran for the legislature, the certified smart people said I should dress, I should like not wear ethnic clothes or ethnic jewelry, I should straighten my hair, I should basically try to look like a white man. So no matter what I do, no matter what day of the week it is, I will never, ever, ever look like a white man, so I've never tried to act like one. I bring all of me to this seat.
Great, thank you. All right, we have 2 more prepared questions, and then we will start bringing forward the questions from the audience. And Ms. Hardesty, this question is for you. What is something you admire about your opponent in this race?
I admire Commissioner Smith's cultivation of the Youth Summer Employment Program.
Commissioner Smith, what is something you admire about your opponent in this race?
I would say that JoAnn knows how to reinvent herself.
That was not the spirit, candidates, of this question. We're moving on. Final question. And the final question goes to Commissioner Smith. How will your life experiences change the dynamics of City Hall?
I think my life experience, because I'm so completely different from every city council person on the Portland City Council, it will bring a new voice, a new focus, and it will be a new front door. Let me tell you a little bit about my experiences. I was raised by a mom with 2 brothers and sisters, 2 sisters, and when she split from my dad, she had to raise us alone. She went back to school at 27 and got a GED. She was actually admitted into college. She had to figure out, does she take a factory job to raise her 3 girls, or does she go to college? She always said to us that she values education and she wanted us to get an education. But she thought the best route for her was to be present and take the job. She encouraged us all to get an education. She encouraged us to do our homework. And then my dad, and I watched him, he struggled a bit with substance abuse. And he always pushed me, and I never gave up on him. He always called me Champ. He was a boxer. And he says, "You're going to be something one day, Champ." And before he passed away, he got clean and sober. I never gave up on him. And I'm never going to give up on the people of Portland. I'm always going to be a champion for the most vulnerable in this city, just like I did for my dad, just like I did with my mom. I'm going to bring this lived experience with me, and I'm going to put an equity lens on everything we do, every policy that we make, every dollar that we appropriate. I'm going to make sure that it's for the most vulnerable in our community.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hardesty, how will your life experiences change the dynamics of City Hall?
Well, as a former legislator, I have policy-making experience. As someone who ran a community nonprofit, I know how to manage a budget and people. As someone who runs their own consulting firm, I know how to engage people around seeking the outcomes they are looking for. I have spent a quality amount of time testifying at Portland City Council over the last decade on a whole host of issues. So City Council chambers won't be new to me. I won't have to learn the process because I spend a lot of quality time there already. In addition, what will be unique is that I do not believe there's been a Navy veteran serving on the City Council. And so bringing all my lived experience to this race means that the City Council will be better because of the quality of my lived experience and because of my ability to excel at bringing other people together so that their voices are the voices that are represented.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna take, how much time for Q&A? We're gonna do Q&A right now. These are questions that were sent in both online and collected through the audience. They've been sort of gathered together, themed. I'm gonna try and make concise questions. Okay, we have about 40 minutes, and then each candidate will have a 3-minute closing statement that they will make. So that's where we're spending our time for the next few minutes. So I really want to appreciate people for sending in their questions. The first question will go to Ms. Hardesty. And the question is about police brutality and misuse of power. Can you please comment on your approach to advancing equity in the Portland Police Bureau and how you will support another African American woman in leadership, Chief Danielle Outlaw?
Thank you for that question. I have been working on police accountability for well over 20 years. I was part of the team that brought the Department of Justice to town to investigate Portland police for how they were harming African American and other people in our community. I am disappointed, I will say, in the outcome of having a Department of Justice here since 2012, because today when I see the police attacking counter-protesters and protecting white nationalists, it makes me absolutely batty. I believe, and I love Chief Outlaw, I believe that she is the right leader at the right time for Portland Police Bureau. She has an uphill battle as only the third woman and the first African American to have that role. My plan to work with her is using the same strategy that I'm able to use at the Department of Public Safety Standard and Practices in Salem, where I am a facilitated trainer of police and community so that the police officers become community police officers. Instead, we train them as if they're headed to the military, and then we pretend they're going to be community police when they get back. I will bring that training into Portland Police Bureau. In fact, Mike Reese, when he was Portland Police Chief, told me he couldn't let me in the Portland Police Training Facility because I would tell the criminals their secret. And so this is the very first time I believe that we have a police chief that understands community and how invested the community must be in creating community police officers, which is why I told her directly I would not support her budget request for 63 new officers.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, please address the issue of police brutality and misuse of power and how you will provide support to Chief Outlaw.
I think we do need police accountability. I did support the chief's effort to get everyone in the police bureau to take implicit bias training the month of May. I supported her bringing public safety officers in because we have a lot of things going on in our community that are not being addressed. I think that when we think of public safety, it shouldn't be consistent with police brutality. My son's apartment got broken into, and it took 3 hours for the police to come and take a statement. And we asked, why did it take so long? And they said, we don't have enough people to address all the calls. In terms of police brutality, we need to figure out how do we train new police officers? How do we give cultural sensitivity training? How do we make sure that the police are in our communities? I've been proposing that we give incentives to police to live in our communities. We have 700 zombie houses here. Why not make sure that police who live in the community take some of those zombie houses over so they can live in the community that they serve? Because right now, they don't know the community. They live other places. It starts at home. We need to figure out how we can engage the police with the community first.
Great, thank you. The next question is related to the Joint Terrorism Task Force and Portland's status as a sanctuary city. Can you please talk about your thoughts on Portland's how Portland participates in the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the impact that has on our sanctuary city status?
I support our sanctuary city status. I support our county sanctuary status because I think it's important that we keep everyone safe in this community. I think it's important that we have folks who have information to make sure that everyone is safe. If you're a public elected leader here, if you don't have information, you can't develop policies that are important and critical to everybody in a community.
Thank you.
You don't have to repeat it unless you want to.
I don't. Go for it.
I think that we do a disservice to the public when we pretend that we're a sanctuary city, county, state, because the reality is that people are under attack who are immigrants and refugees and African American and Latino and Native American, and it happens consistently since 45 was elected. A piece of paper does not make people safe. We must pull out of the Portland Joint Tourism Task Force, and that will be on my 30-day agenda once I am sitting on the Portland City Council. Mayor Tom Potter refused to join the Portland Joint Tourism Task Force because as police chief, he was not willing to have police officers working, doing stuff that he could not know about. It is short-sighted for us to believe that the Portland Joint Tourism Task Force has kept anyone safe at all. In fact, I think it has actually made police much more aggressive because we have seen that play out at protests over and over and over again. And that will be my first order of business, and I already know where my other 2 votes are. I'm hoping it's unanimous on the city council, but I know I already have 2 votes to pull us out immediately of the Portland Joint Tourism Task Force. We should have never rejoined, and Charlie Hale slipped it in on his way out the door, and we cannot call ourselves a sanctuary city when Multnomah County sheriffs are colluding with ICE to remove people from Multnomah County Courthouse.
Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Thank you. We have asked for you to hold your applause. I know you're excited. I know you're passionate. This is not the place. Ms. Hardesty, thank you for your comment. The next question is for you. What are your priorities for addressing houselessness, and how will you measure effectiveness?
Thank you for that question. After 106 house parties, it is clear that every corner of Portland is concerned about housing and houselessness. I will implement a process where we will hire houseless people to take mobile garbage pickups, mobile laundry, mobile hot meals. We will spend 10% of the resources we currently spend from police, as if police will ever solve our housing crisis. Last year, Portland Police, 52% of their arrests were of people who were houseless, and basically the arrests were around crimes of poverty. We should all be ashamed to think that we are using public safety resources to target, harass people who are houseless through no fault of their own. I know that it is hard because I am on the board of Human Solutions, and I've been on that board for 8 years, that most of the people in our shelter work 2 and 3 full-time jobs. They just can't afford first, last, security deposit, pet deposit, and pet rent to live in the city of Portland. And we must do better to make sure that we have housing at every income level. Yes, we need to do also a better job of actually foreclosing on houses that have been derelict. The fact that it takes 7 years to foreclose on a house is inexcusable when it is a neighborhood eyesore. We could do so much better, but we have to use compassion and empathy. But for grace could be any one of us living on the street.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, how would you address houselessness, and how would you measure effectiveness?
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you for that question. Multnomah County is responsible for the homeless agenda, and we partner with the city of Portland. And one of the things that we're doing, we're putting $60 million above existing services to deal with homelessness. One of the things that I would do differently, I take half that money and I would land bank it. And I'd start buying up multiplexes to buy down the affordability. I take some of that money and upgrade some of these brownfields that we have throughout the city of Portland. We have 960 brownfields, which are properties that have cleaners on them, properties that have gas stations. Make them out of mixed-use housing opportunities to address the affordable housing, the middle housing, and the market rate housing. We have to build at every housing level so that the people at the top won't gobble up all the affordable and mid housing at the bottom. We need to make sure that we're very clear that we need to have the market rate, the prospective market rate multiplexes put in a multi-program where we give the property owners incentives to buy down that property so that we can put affordable at the 30 percentile level in those properties. And then we need to start doing that like today. That's easy. We can do it today if we passed it. That's how I deal with homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, just given the heat in the room, I'm going to ask one more question from the audience, and then I will ask the candidates to do their final 3-minute statement. Can you please speak about, Commissioner Smith, can you please speak about how you have advanced policies that support the well-being and safety and wealth building for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender communities?
Thank you. As I was trying to figure out what to do with our $5 million that we have in economic development, I wanted to look at how I could help women, how I could help people of color who are actually doing seed investments in tech startups and other startups. So I worked with Charlie Hales and asked him if he would be willing to do this, because less than 2% of the venture capital goes to women and people of color. And I said, if you put 500,000 in, I'll put 500,000 in. He said, do you have your votes? I said, I know how to count to 3 in a 5-man board. And for me, to be able to put together that inclusive fund to make sure that women and people of color, that they have an opportunity to make sure they have an opportunity to get that early first seed money is so important and it's so critical. So I doubled back a couple of years ago, put another $150,000 in that fund. So now we have funded, with economic development money, opportunities for people to have entrepreneurial jobs and to have businesses that support the community.
Can you speak specifically to how that approach benefits lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender
So if you know
community?
anything about Does it work? If you know anything about public money, you can't desegregate money. You can't say this money is just for one group or another when you have public money. My inclusive fund, my summer jobs program, it's for everyone. I agree that in many cases, there are disparities in the LGBTQ community in terms of having access to capital. And that's why I started the Inclusive Fund. And that's why I came back and put another $150,000 in that fund.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I love you too.
Ms. Hardesty, can you please talk about how you will advance health, safety, economic well-being in the LGBTQ community?
So I can tell you what I've done. When I moved here January 1st, 1990, there was a group operating in Portland, in Oregon, called the Oregon Citizens Alliance. That organization was very anti-gay, lesbian, transgender, and just about every general election season when I first moved here, there was some anti-gay discriminatory measure on the ballot. I did not have a position at all. However, I immediately volunteered to oppose all those anti-gay measures. I actually joined the team. Even when the team was only putting money in white neighborhoods, I was out talking to African American church leaders and educating the African American community about why these measures were so harmful and so dangerous in our community. That's the kind of leader I have always been, regardless of what my title is. And what you can expect is that I will always treat all people with the dignity and respect that they deserve, regardless of their income, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their sexual identity. I have lived that experience, so I don't have to say what I will do. I will continue to address those threats as they show up and squash them as quickly as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. The folks who are supporting Ms. Hardesty, you're out of line. Please refrain from the shouting and clapping. Sorry, those are the rules, right? Thank you. So, Commissioner Smith, you began with the opening statement. So, Ms. Hardesty, you may begin with the closing 3-minute statement.
Thank you very much. So, I can tell you the day I knew we had the wrong people on Portland City Council. I showed up to testify on a Portland police contract that had been opened in secret, renegotiated in secret, and was on the fast track for passage at City Council that day. When I showed up that day, there were riot police surrounding City Hall. There was Homeland Security, Portland Police, Gresham, TriMet, etc. Now, I'm not easily intimidated, so I went in City Hall anyway, and I testified in opposition. But many community members were intimidated and would not try to get into City Hall. That day, I knew, once I found out that if one city council member had objected, Mayor Charlie Hales would not have been able to do that. That was the day I knew we had the wrong people on City Council. Why do I want to be your City Council member? Because I want to make sure that the City Council represents you, that the people of the city of Portland are the priority, not the downtown business interests, not special interest groups, but the people who work, are educated, who worship, who have invested in Portland as their home. I wasn't born in Portland, but Portland is my home. I didn't wait to be invited. I got active day one. A city councilor with a legislative background, with the ability to build coalitions that get things done, a city commissioner who works across race, gender, social economic class to get things done, a commissioner who will not substitute their best judgment for yours, a commissioner who will be available because I will make sure that the city council moves out to the neighborhood. So on day one, I will release my schedule for my quarterly meetings all over the city of Portland. Because guess what? As I've talked to people all over the city, 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning downtown does not work to come and sit for a couple hours waiting for your 2 to 3 minutes testimony. Why aren't we doing it when people are off work, out of school, when families can actually participate? That's the kind of leader I have always been, and those are the skill sets I bring to Portland City Council. I want to thank the Oregonian, the Scanner, Willamette Weed. I love the title in the picture, Willamette Weed. All the media endorsements that I received, I want to thank Portland Association of Teachers, the Longshoremen. I want to thank ASME and all the other supporters that I have received. This is a people campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, your 3-minute closing statement.
Thank you, Tricia. I want to thank you for being the moderator today. You did a great job. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Race Talks, for hosting this. Let me leave you with a couple closing thoughts. My entire career has been devoted to public service. When you elect Loretta Smith, you get an advocate, you get a champion that knows this city through 5 generations of family. You get someone who's spent their entire adult life serving the public, doing her homework. Everything that I do is to promote the communities that I come from. This isn't about politics. This is about being the people's champion. I'm the one on this stage who carried the resolution to make Multnomah County a sanctuary county, to make sure that everybody felt safe. I'm the one who created over 7,000 jobs and leveraged our money over the last 8 years for our young people to live and work and play in this community. I'm the one who led the fight to keep seniors in their homes through Project Independence. And I'm the one on this stage who led the effort to provide housing for drug-impacted women, veterans, and seniors. I'm the one who fought to bring the $15 minimum wage to the county. I'm the one who supports the project labor agreements at the county. And I will support PLAs on every infrastructure project at the city. I am that one. I know what it means to worry about housing because I've lived it. I know what it's like to struggle as a single parent, to raise a child and put food on the table. That is why I will always stand up for women and children and immigrants and vulnerable communities. I know what it's like to be the first person in their family to graduate from college. I've helped low-income families to have computers, internet access, so that they might have a shot of going to college. I know what it's like to struggle to get ahead as a woman of color in the state of Oregon. I know how to be a champion for women and people of color. I have a long track record of education experience, legislative experience. I've passed over 78 budget amendments. I know what it takes to be effective. I have done it before, and with your help, I'm going to do it again. And when elected, I will start working on day one to make sure that we create more affordable housing, continue to address homelessness, and create jobs and opportunities for those left behind and left out. I've worked with many of you in this room, and I will continue to work with you at City Hall, because now more than ever, we need a strong voice and an effective leader who can work collaboratively and effectively, not
Thank you,
angrily,
Commissioner.
in this
Thank you.
community.
Thank you,
I'm asking you for your vote, and I'm asking you for your
Thank you.
support.
I want to thank the audience for your passion, and especially thank the audience who came to listen and did not take more than your share of airspace. I would like to thank Donna Maxey for organizing Race Talks and for being here for the long haul. And most importantly, I would like to thank our two phenomenal, highly qualified, brilliant African-American women city council candidates for sharing their vision with all of you. Thank you so much.
All right, go crazy!